Today's episode has been brought to you by Zependo. Zependo gives the power to manage contracts, edit them on the fly, send for e-signatures, manage expirations, alerts, and more, all unlimited. Try it today and get 15% off your first purchase. Just use coupon code VINCE1076. That's capital V, lowercase INCE, 1076. Hi there, my name is Vince Salerno, and welcome to the Vince Salerno Podcast. If you're looking for a place to get your weekly filmmaker fix, well, you've come to the right place. On this podcast, I discuss the latest in movie news, such as trailers, rumors, and more. I also discuss trends in the film industry and give my own insight as a filmmaker with special guests that are friends and film fans alike. So grab your popcorn and a nice cold drink, sit back and relax, because the Vince Salerno Podcast starts right now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Vince Salerno Podcast. This is episode 57. I'm your host, Vince Salerno, just filmmaker, talking films, and today we're talking about a very, very special film, if you cannot tell by the image behind me. What? That didn't work like I expected. Spiderman, No Way Home. We are finally going to talk about this movie. I've been planning this review for quite some time. I didn't not want to talk about it, but I had to wait for a very special friend of mine to be ready. She is a actress, she's a director, she's a writer, she's a producer, she's one of the most talented people I know. She's one of my best friends on this planet. Shelby Turner has returned to the Vince Salerno Podcast.
Oh, Vinny, thank you. I'm so glad to be back. And I think the last time I was on, we talked about Spider-Man. So this is a big deal for me. I'm like really excited to be back.
I think we were talking about Homecoming.
Yes. And now we are back.
Now we're rounding it out by, talking about the final chapter and skipping what I thought was the worst Spider-Man movie ever, which was Far From Home.
Well,
what did you think of Far From Home? I don't know if I ever asked you.
I think it was definitely like, I can see why you say that, because it's kind of it was more exposition. It was kind of like we needed more information in order to get to this, so it's not like the whole MCU where we had like 38 movies to get to Endgame where they had to kind of do it. But I actually thought it was fun. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. I really liked him in that role. But yeah, it was just another Spider-Man movie, so.
For me, it was an okay film. I don't think it was like commit any cardinal sins or anything. I just thought for what they were doing with the character, I just felt it was going in the wrong direction. I didn't like what they did with Mysterio being a complete fake out, and he ends the movie with his costume being a motion capture suit in a computer bubble. I just thought that was the worst costume decision ever.
Really?
Yeah, it's just like it's so lame. It's like you gave him this epic comic book accurate suit.
Yeah.
And you trade it for a motion capture suit. It's like they called it circus. They're like, hey, can we borrow one of your suits?
But like the smart technology, that was cool how they used how they kind of integrated the Stark Avengers World with the comic book. I think that was a good way to mend the two, but I totally see what you're saying.
I was just kind of turned off by we need to make every Spider-Man villain a Tony Stark adversary as well. Someone who's corrupting their legacy. Because I understood with the Vulture why they did it. It made sense, but it's like, okay, you're doing the same thing but different. I also just didn't like setting. I just didn't think that the plot was too. I didn't feel like it was appropriate given where we were with the last time we saw Spider-Man in Endgame. It was just, to me, it didn't work. But
I can see that.
This movie, No Way Home, I think does something for me that I very few sequels tend to do for me. It makes me at least understand what they were trying to do with No Way Far From Home and why that chapter was the way it was.
Yeah.
Because like the trilogy, if you look at it from, you know, beginning to end, there is a clear path of what they're trying to do, I think.
Totally.
Like the first film was Peter Parker wanting to, you know, be Spider-Man without necessarily relying on you know, Tony Stark to define him as Spider-Man.
Right.
And the second film was you know, about him being on his own, or, you know, in the figurative sense, far from home, and
Right.
having to rise up himself as Spider-Man, take on that responsibility. And then this film is really like hitting home, like if this whole trilogy was like a long origin trilogy, as opposed to just one film being the origin, like by the end of this series, this trilogy, he's the Spider-Man that we all know and love.
Yeah. No, yeah. So they did a good job with that. I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're gonna do with this review is what I typically do with reviews. We'll talk about first the story, the cast, and the characters, and then we'll talk about the craftsmanship of the movie, and then our final thoughts. Because it's been so long, I don't think we need to really do like a preamble of like non-spoiler thoughts or anything like that. If you've seen them, if guys, it's been a month. You've seen the movie, or you haven't seen the movie.
Yeah.
It's literally like tomorrow it'll have been officially a month since the movie's been out. So.
Oh, that's true. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. If you haven't seen, well, wait, did it come out the 15th or the 17th?
Now I'm confused. I don't remember.
Yeah, whatever. It's been about a month. So
yeah.
If you've seen it, you know we're going to talk about it. If you haven't seen it, well, then I don't know why.
If you're on the internet, I'm sure you've seen a spoiler. So, you know, it's like, that's why I had to go see this movie opening weekend, because I was like, I'm not letting, this is like the ultimate movie for me. I can't let this get spoiled. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Shelby, let's, I guess before we get into the story, let's just talk about what we thought about the film. So Shelby, let's start with you. What did you think of the movie?
I loved it. I thought it was so good. Like that's the most fun I've had in the theater in a long time. Like, then again, it's kind of, you know, we didn't have theaters for a while, and then like the movies that were coming out were like Dune. So you know, but no, like Jungle Cruise came out, that was good. But for some reason, this movie, I mean, I just love Marvel, and Spider-Man is always been one of my favorite superheroes. And there was so much hype behind it that I was like, I can't wait. And it was so good. What they did was very good. I do have my certain things that I'm a little bit throw at you that I'm a little disappointed about, but I do love this movie. It is so great. It's so great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you right there. I think this is the best Spider-Man movie they've made so far. And not just in the fact that they managed to, I'm sure they managed to fit 3 Spider-Men into the movie, and it's not only a celebration of Marvel, but it's a celebration of Spider-Man and his legacy in film to this point.
Yeah.
The movie works as, I mean, yes, you go in, you think like, oh, this is going to be like a cameo nostalgia fest because it's the original Spider-Man villains and some original Spider-Man characters coming into this universe, but they really treat them like characters. They're not like cut out carbon cheesy copies of like, oh, we're bringing back Doc Ock. Here's Doc Ock. Yeah.
No,
and he's like cracking the same jokes and the same lines. I mean, there's a little bit of that in this, but it almost feels like this is the spiritual finale to those previous Spider-Man trilogies or series, because those never really had a proper ending. I mean, Spider-Man 3, I guess you could say, had its proper ending, but like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man universe, like that never had an end.
Yeah.
And this feels like spiritually like a chance for us to revisit that and kind of tie up loose ends with both of those versions. And it feels like an end to this era of Spider-Man in film, not just for the previous movies, but for this current trilogy and for Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and the way, and just add really quick, the way they integrate, the thing that makes this movie the best Spider-Man movie, in my opinion, is that it gets to the heart of what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. And I guess we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I loved it. 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. I don't say that for a lot of movies. And I think this movie is a very rare 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 perfect film. I really don't have any complaints with it, especially the nostalgia stuff, which could have gone either way, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So I want to know, what were the little gripes that you were teasing about?
Okay, so the best stuff was honestly having the three all together. Like, I mean, the whole buildup was so awesome, like those teaser trailers and like just those little bits, like even, you know, like the Willem Dafoe, like kind of like Green Goblin, like the bomb coming out, and you're like, no way, because you already see like Doc Ock, and you're just like, ah. So when you actually like saw it in the theater, it was like, no way, we're actually doing this. Because I mean, we knew. It's so funny too. Like after the fact, I told myself, like going into the theater, like, okay, no, I'm gonna like expect disappointment otherwise, so I don't get disappointed.
Yeah, that's what you have.
And I was like, honestly, like, okay, no, there's no way they're not gonna do all three Spider-Man. Like, because I've been binge watching Andrew Garfield and like Tobey Maguire interviews and like seeing how they act and stuff. And I was like, you're right. Like, there's no way they're gonna actually put all three. But I'm like, hello, they put all the other actors, all the other villains from both movies. Why would they not have these three?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So, but when they actually came out, it was like, this is the best. And those were the best. Like, if those scenes is what made this movie the best Spider-Man movie ever, like actually seeing the three of them, but also, like you said, like Andrew Garfield plays Spider-Man so intimately and different than like Tobey Maguire does, but they're all so good. So yes, I just had to agree with you there. But what they did that really angered me was Doctor Strange is one of my all-time favorite superheroes. Doctor Strange, I love you.
I'm so glad you said that, because I feel like I've been, and I didn't know you felt that way about Doctor Strange.
Yes, I love him. It's Iron Man all the way.
Oh my gosh, guys, I told you this woman is Shelby Turner is amazing.
And then Black Panther for me, and then Spider-Man. Like, those have always been like my favorites. I love Spider-Man. He's kind of like a given, like in there, like, you know, I don't know where he goes, but he's like a given favorite. Yeah. But anyway, so Doctor Strange, let's break this down for a second, because I'm actually wanting to ask you, because okay, this whole spell thing and like this reckless behavior that we're seeing from him is totally different from his character arc from when we last saw him in Endgame. So I'm like, why? You're acting like the exact same Doctor Strange we saw like in your first movie. Like, I don't understand why you're being cocky and kind of being like, oh, we can do this really dangerous spell. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, like, all these other things, like a genie, you know, it's like, oh, by the way, gotcha.
Yeah.
No one's gonna remember you. And then by the end of the movie, he's like, oh, I'm so hurt that I'm not gonna remember you. When, like, you know, it's just kind of inconsistent. And when we watched it, I was just like, what? Wait, what? You know, I mean, we're supposed to be in like suspended belief by the end of like, this is the only way, but it's like, it's not, in my opinion. Like, he could have done the same spell, you know, and just been like, all right, everybody who knew I was Spider-Man before still needs to know that could have happened. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, wow. Well, so I think that if we look back at Doctor Strange in the previous movies, like, yeah, he has an arc in the first film that is kind of him realizing, like, deciding to take on a higher calling and a role of self-sacrifice as the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
but as we see in Infinity War and kind of in Endgame, I guess not really, but especially in Infinity War, he kind of has an ego battle with Tony Stark.
Well, yeah.
And both of them think
they both
think that they know what the best course of action is to stop Thanos or to protect the Time Stone.
Right.
So I don't think that Strange necessarily grew out of his ability to, or his thought process that he thinks that he knows what's best.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That totally makes sense. And I do kind of see the like, oh, okay, like like that was
like when Wong is like, nah, you'd probably just screw it up, and he's just like, you know what, you just inspired a great idea. I know in my basement I keep a little cylinder where I can cast a spell that'll make you forget. And he's just like, yeah, I got this. Of course I got this. And it's like, Wong doing that little jab. Sense. It's like, he has to kind of do it just to show Wong that he's wrong.
Right. No, and that is congruent with his character. But then the whole like, he's like, he already says, we've saved half the world together. I think we're beyond these, like, and so then all of a sudden he's like, oh, by the way, everyone's going to forget who you are, including me. And he just at that moment doesn't care. It's like, I think that I don't know. That just like kind of didn't make sense to me. I feel like he'd be like, okay, Peter, this is what we're going to do. This is how this works. And these are the conditions. It's very specific. So like, what do you want out of this spell? Like, I just feel like it was kind of like a little bit of a cheap way to move the story forward.
It was easily avoided the way that everybody forgets. Like you had him pause and say, okay, look, is there anybody you don't want me to cast this?
Yeah, like including me, it's like,
do you want the Avengers to know? Do you want like your friends to know? Do you want me to know?
Okay, do you see what I mean? Like it's kind of like, seriously, you're gonna cast that spell and not give Peter any conditions, and then by the end we're like, wait, you what? In the movie I was totally in it and like didn't care about it, and that's probably what most people have done, where you're just like, I'm not mad because this movie was freaking awesome. Right. We got to see all of our Spider-Man, but I was like so disappointed in my Doctor Strange. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of
I think it was a lapse of judgment. I just chalk it up to like he messed up as well as Peter messed up.
Yeah, maybe that's the point. Maybe he wasn't thinking, and he was just like you said, trying to prove to Wong like, I got this, and then he's like, wait.
I have a theory that this actually has done some irreparable damage to the multiverse. That's how we get into the multiverse of madness. Because if you watch Loki, Loki, the multiverse is kind of coming undone in all different aspects. Like there's hints that Wanda is tampering with it to get children.
And the trailer that we get with Doctor Strange 2, that's like a big like, okay, now we're into the multiverse, and it was setting that up, but it was still like, for some reason it was kind of like, I don't know, the whole time I was kind of like, this doesn't feel like Doctor Strange. Like maybe he's a multiverse Doctor Strange right now in this moment.
I've heard that theory. Yeah,
I'm not sure, but
I really think he was like, one, he was just really trying to prove himself to Wong. Two, he also cares for Peter and wants to just help him because he's a good kid. Right. And it was just his ego getting to the best of him.
I can see that. Yeah.
But like, if you see all these things that are going on around the MCU with the multiverse, like Wanda tampering with it to possibly get her kids back, we don't know for sure. What happened in Loki, the What If series, and now Spider-Man No Way Home. It's like the multiverse is kind of coming undone in multiple parts of this universe. Right. And so I'm assuming like something major is just going to send this whole thing over the edge in Doctor Strange, where like,
I think so, yeah,
reality is now coming undone because multiverses are kind of merging now. So that's where I'm at with it. Because also the I think the reason why at the end he doesn't just cast the spell, not let Ned and MJ and Aunt May, well, not anime, happy remember him, because the spell that they cast that was tearing apart the multiverse is still like contained. Like they didn't stop it, they just contained it. So it's still so. And then when Green Goblin blows up the box, it just unleashes, and then it's like the only way to at that point undo it is to just cast the spell as it should have been. That's the second.
And that's literally 100%.
If anything, you should blame the Green Goblin for blowing up the box. Otherwise,
thanks a lot, Norman.
Seriously, because then Doctor Strange could have, because he was trying to get it so that he could send the villains home, and then the spell would be reversed.
Yeah, because when he came back from the Grand Canyon, he was like, actually like, whoa, this is working, and what's going on?
Yeah, like he was like daily just like, okay.
Yeah, and I think that's why it was heartbreaking. And that's exactly what you said. That's what I chalked it up to in the end, where I was like, you know what? This was the only way for this to work. Otherwise, the movie would have a huge, like, that would be a huge plot hole. But you know, I don't think it was that obvious. It was like, no, they intended to do that, and it does make sense, but it just took me a little bit of time to be like,
yeah, no, it's a valid complaint for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I wonder if anybody else feels that way. Put it in the comments below.
Right, it's stinking Goblin.
I know, and that was so good. Oh my gosh. So
yeah, so let's first, before we get into that, let's just talk about the story. So the story, as we see, is Mysterio leaks to the public that Spider-Man's real identity is Peter Parker. He becomes a menace to some, and some people stand with him. Some people think he's a menace. He can't get into college at MIT because of this, and Ned and MJ can't get into MIT, and he's just kind of sick of this affecting everybody else.
Yeah.
And so he goes, as we said, he goes to Doctor Strange, asks him if he can cast a spell to turn back time. Initially, he asks, can you go back in time, make it so that Mysterio never revealed my identity? And he says, no, but I can make people forget that you are Spider-Man. And of course, casts a spell prematurely, not letting Peter know exactly what's going on. They try to change it mid-cast, and it almost destroys the entire universe, but they're able to contain it. But they've brought in villains from the previous Spider-Man universes into the MCU. So you have Doc Ock, you have Green Goblin, you have Electro, and you have Sandman and the Lizard.
Yes.
Doc Ock and Green Goblin from the Sam Raimi films, or Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and Sandman from the Sam Raimi films.
Yes.
Lizard and Electro from the Mark Webb movies. And Peter and Doctor Strange have to round up the villains and send them back to their multiverses or universes before the multiverse collapses.
Yeah.
So I think I told you from an early on, like when this story first leaked and it came out that we were doing a multiverse Spider-Man movie, I was like, no, I don't want it.
That's right. Yeah.
I was so against this idea, because I thought, okay, every Spider-Man movie has just been kind of, in the MCU at least, has been very gimmicky. Like,
yeah, like
let's put Spider-Man in a 80s John Hughes movie. Let's put Spider-Man in Europe, and now let's put Spider-Man in the multiverse. It's like, no, stop. I don't like this. Like, I also would pair them with like the mentors in each film. So it's like, like Spider-Man 1 was like him with Stark Tech.
Right.
Spider-Man 2 was him with like spies and Europe and Nick Fury. And then this is going to be like Spider-Man and magic and Doctor Strange. It's like, no, I don't want Spider-Man and magic. I just want freaking Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Yeah, that makes sense. That totally makes sense.
But as like, and I was constantly in denial of the rumors of a multiverse movie. And I was just like, no, I don't want to do it.
No.
And as it went on, I grew on the idea. I thought, well, if they're really bringing everybody back, it might be an exciting, fun movie. And, having seen it and obviously getting over my initial hesitation, I was surprisingly impressed at how magic-y this movie feels.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It has its moments. Like once the villains are there, once they've casted the spell, there are a lot of moments where it just feels like a street level Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, like so grounded. Yes, I felt the same way. Yeah, totally. Because like you know what you said about Far From Home, that one did feel even a little bit, it was like a little too much, because it was like, oh, Nick Fury suddenly this like off-world alien, you know, I forget what they're called.
I hated that too. That's part of the reason why I don't
like they're kind of, and they kind of like just say it in the new, you know, that's another thing that Marvel does a lot, where they'll just be like, oh, just put it one sentence in there, they'll get it, you know, like, oh, Nick Fury's been off-world, and you're like, oh, thanks for clearing that up for us. You know, you're like, what? That's like a huge plot point.
Like, you introduced Spider-Man to Nick Fury, and he's not even actual Nick Fury.
Right. It was like, wait, what? No, like I do kind of
Talos.
Yeah, that was a part of that movie that I kind of didn't like. But yeah, no, I totally agree, where it was like, and I think they played on that too, because like Doc Ock was like, what is this, like a clown, you know, you're like, what is this, a birthday party? And it's like we play on that, like, wait, there's magic here, and there's this kind of, so I think the fact that we made fun of it, and we like kind of in a sense broke the audience metaphorical fourth wall of like, okay, what are they gonna do, you know, it was oh cool, you at least address that, otherwise it was gonna feel a little hokey, you know.
For sure.
I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, I'm glad that like he didn't get like a magic suit in the middle of the film. Like he turned one of his web shooters into a relic.
Yeah, that was cool.
In Doctor Strange, they talk about how like they imbue some magic is too powerful to contain, so they imbue it into items, and those items become relics. So he turns his web shooter into a relic.
Yeah, that was so cool. That was actually cool. Like you said, it was like congruent. It wasn't just like, oh, we just suddenly made these rules. You know, it was like, we know that about Doctor Strange.
It wasn't like Spider-Man, but he's magic now. It was like, no, like he's just got this one tool. It does this one thing.
Right. But Ned has some kind of magic, which is very interesting. And I don't know if you've heard anything about what, you know, is in the future for Ned, and like,
I don't think that we're gonna see Ned and MJ in the future movies. I think they're done, unless Ned is reintroduced somehow and he gets mad because Peter didn't find him and becomes the Hobgoblin, and he also has magic.
That's the best idea ever.
I literally just came up with that.
Oh my gosh, you know what? That actually would make sense, because in the scene where, you know, Tobey Maguire's like, what happened to your best friend? And that whole funny, like, awkward is like,
he died in my
arms. Go crazy and kill you. And it's like, what if that was a setup for him actually trying to do that? But personally, like, if we're looking at the business side, like contracts and things like that, I think honestly Tom Holland might be done. I've heard him like talk about like, you know, I want to kind of settle down and start a family. He's been like nonstop, like working constantly. And so maybe he's just kind of like, well, but part of me thinks that they might do something with Andrew Garfield again. That's my prediction. I don't know, but
the way I see it, what I've heard, he's not done acting per se, and he's not done with Spider-Man, but I do think he was being honest when he said things like, I want to start a family and I want to, you know, think about life after acting.
Yeah.
He's already contracted to do another Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man 4 is already happening.
Okay.
But I think he was also lobbying for more money, because this movie, like, you know, this movie is on track to be one of the highest grossing films of all time, and he's just like, you know, I think my paycheck should go up a little bit, and he actually got it up to like I think it was like the 6 figures I read.
Nice.
So he got like a big pay bump.
Well, he should. I mean, at this point.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I think he's going to become like, you know, I mean, I think this is only the beginning of his career.
And he works hard, you know, like he's not just like, he continues to do movies that people present him with. So he's going to play
Fred Astaire in a movie. So.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't hear about that. That's really awesome.
Yeah. So I do agree with you though. I do think that they're going to somehow make Andrew Garfield a permanent addition to this universe. I think if anything, he'll be the multiverse Spider-Man, or I don't think that like the rumors of like, oh, they're gonna do Amazing Spider-Man 3. I don't see that happening.
No,
unless they make it a one and done movie, like make it for the purpose of ending the trilogy of Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I could see that. It's actually something that I had thought
like finish that story and then still have him around.
But I'll talk about my all-time favorite part of the movie. Like, I would love to hear your like favorite ultimate part.
Sure.
But for me,
go for it.
In the end of Spider-Man, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, the second one with Electro, that was so tragic and heartbreaking for me that I had to take like a week and like process that. I had no idea that was happening because like the first time I remember when we watched it, I was like beside myself. I was like, I don't understand why they did that to me. Like in all of like pretty much every superhero movie, like they always win, you know, they always save the girl, they always have a happy ending. And what they did to me with that movie, I was not expecting her to not make it. And I was like so upset. And then the fact that they ended that, basically they let Andrew Garfield's character as Spider-Man have closure with saving this Tom Holland's universe, Peter Parker.
MJ, yeah.
With MJ, that was my favorite part. I started crying. I was like, I needed that closure too. It was so, I'm so glad they did that. So like in that sense, either if they never did another Spider-Man movie with Andrew Garfield, I'd be like, it's already complete because we've, like you said, they kind of closed all of the universes like from the different movies in this movie. But or it can give him a chance to be like, okay, now I'm the moved on Spider-Man with I've closed this, and maybe we'll see another love interest in another movie, who knows, and maybe we can actually see Andrew Garfield have that Spider-Man actually work on a relationship like Tobey Maguire's, maybe we can finally see him have love, maybe not, but something like that I can see happening. But anyway, that was my all-time favorite part of the movie. It was so good.
My favorite part, oh man, there's so many.
I know there was a lot. I would say like all the scenes where they were all together were my favorite parts.
Yeah,
but
that was filmmaking.
Yeah.
And acting.
Yeah.
I will cheat. I will give you my two favorite moments.
Okay.
I absolutely loved the first fight between the Green Goblin and Peter Parker.
Me too.
Spider-Man. Like the whole scene where like you find out that the Green Goblin has been letting Norman kind of take control, and then
yes,
Willem Dafoe is just a national treasure. I mean,
he's so good.
He's an incredible actor.
He's so good.
I'm glad they got rid of that mask because like he just looks like the Green Goblin in his face.
No, he's so good. Like that
fight was brutal and violent and everything I wanted to see in a Tom Holland movie. Like I wanted to see like him suffer and him like get hurt and like a villain that really challenges his morality,
totally,
his moral compass, his moral code. So that fight, even as sad as it was, the death of Aunt May, which we'll get to in just a second. Then we'll go on to talking about the cast. But my second favorite was when Andrew and Toby enter the movie in the portal.
Oh yeah, that was so exciting.
Because I mean, that was just like such a surreal thing.
It was.
We didn't. Thank God, Sony had the patience to not show a single frame of film with those two actors in it.
And they did a good job. Like they did such a good job keeping it under wraps. I'm kind of just like, oh my gosh.
I mean,
and the actors
it
themselves.
leaked a long time ago, but there was no actual like video or photos.
No.
There was technically photos out there, but like nothing that was really like solid, like definitely is happening.
Exactly.
And to see the scene that it plays out, just not knowing anything, I was just the theater erupted.
Oh yeah, totally same. And that's always so fun when it's these huge movies like this, and there's like an energy within the whole theater where everybody's cheering and clapping because we're all nerds hanging out in the same room, nerding out together.
Yeah. And
I
forgot
so
how
epic.
It was epic, and I forgot how great both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are, especially Andrew Garfield, who I think now has become like,
he's my favorite.
He's been realized. I think he's my favorite too, honestly. I was thinking about it the other day. I was just like,
my favorite.
Nobody embodies, like just looking at a clip of him in the mask talking as Spider-Man, nobody has embodied Spider-Man.
100%.
Andrew Garfield has.
He has taken the character and put a totally different, like a very human, very like actual, just a totally unique Peter Parker. It's nothing that we've seen before.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. I still think that Tom Holland is like, he's to me the definitive Peter Parker. Like he's found a way, the way I see it, Tobey Maguire is a good Peter Parker, but he's not necessarily a good Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield's a good Spider-Man, but he's not necessarily an accurate Peter Parker. And Tom Holland's a good medium between the both, where that you can clearly tell when he's Spider-Man and when he's Peter Parker, and he has a good way of putting it on and off. But I think I fell in love. I fell back in love with Andrew Garfield's performance, and there's this hilarious scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2 where he's like got like attacked by Electro, and he's like on the ground. He's just like, oh, it's just your organs and your bones, and your brain. Yeah. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is like ripped right out of a comic book strip, because that's something he would totally say in the comics.
Yes.
And he would just get back up and keep fighting. So I thought to myself, like, okay, I think that Andrew Garfield has my vote now.
And I'm curious to see what I said before, because I think we did this last time, like what our favorite Spider-Man was then. And I honestly think I did say Andrew Garfield. Like he has always kind of been like my favorite, because I love how emotional his Spider-Man is too. Like he's a real kid, like with all these different emotions and like actual things that you go through, and like he's just makes him quirky but also so relatable. Like I love it. And so that scene where he's like, I love you guys.
Yeah. So I love that was a great improvised moment that he did.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We obviously can't say any of this without talking about Tobey Maguire, because obviously he's the pioneer. To me, like he's like Michael Keaton's Batman. It's like he may not be everybody's favorite, but like you acknowledge that like he was the Spider-Man one, and like he's like a king among these princes.
Absolutely. And I think that's like exactly what we saw in this film, and it wasn't gimmicky either. It was like, oh my gosh, like, and the fact that they commented on like, the like the webs.
I love that.
It's like, because I think as we got older, we were like, yeah, wait, that doesn't make sense. Like that's
coming out of you.
Yeah. But like I think they acknowledge that, like, wow, you're the OG Spider-Man. Like you have webs that actually come out of you, and you like, we look up to you. Like he's obviously has aged. He's the oldest Spider-Man. He's like the Spider-Man. And that was cool too, that they let that be and let him be like, oh my gosh. And like that moment with him and Doc Ock, and
oh my gosh, like, so great.
Like, oh my god.
That's like, what I'm talking about with like that moment could have easily been like okay, let's do a nostalgia fest. But it was like,
it was
holy
so
crap.
real.
Think about it. It's Peter Parker, like what, 20 years after that, after seeing his mentor die.
Yeah.
20 years after seeing him again. And for Doc Ock, it's been like, a couple days, and he's had this like, he's finally become himself again because of the inhibitor chip,
right,
from the claws. And so like Peter's getting to see his mentor again as he once was.
Yeah, that's like huge.
Doc Ock's getting to see his student go on to become this great hero.
Totally.
Like, so that moment was just so sweet, and it didn't overstay its welcome. It was just like,
I agree. It was perfect.
They said the power of the sun line, which I didn't think was, like, yeah, it was a nostalgic line, but it felt natural. I don't know how else to explain it, but it just felt very natural the way it was.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So I guess we all know how the story goes down. Let's just talk about the end really quick. Let's get into the characters. So
Hey, so Shelby Turner and I had a really great time recording this episode of the Vince Salerno Podcast talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. Unfortunately, we went a lot longer on this episode than I wanted to, and unfortunately I had to make the decision to cut this episode into 2 halves, so this is actually where I'm going to cut it off. But tune in to next week's episode of the Vince Salerno Podcast to hear our continued conversation and review of Spider-Man No Way Home. I want to thank my guest, Shelby Turner, the amazing Shelby Turner. It's such a joy to have her on the show and talk to her about Spider-Man, movies, and all sorts of other things. We'll definitely have her back on the show to talk about other stuff, specifically acting, because she's just a phenomenal actress. I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you next week for part 2 of the Spider-Man No Way Home review by me and Shelby Turner. Thanks for listening. God bless, and peace out.